Hi everyone. What I'd like to do today is to give you some ideas about how to generate speech topics. And what I want to go over first is what I'd like for you to do is just take out a piece of paper and kind of follow along with what I'm doing. So on one side of the paper, I want you to write down, and you can do this free form, where you write down topics or things that you like to talk about. So for instance, for me, there are several different things that I enjoy discussing and talking about, and one of them is college football. I am a Alabama Crimson Tide fan. Please don't boo me, but that's what I grew up with, and I love talking about the history of that program, growing up watching Bear Bryant football games. I love it. I've also been researching my family history ever since I was right around 16 years old. So I know a tremendous amount of information about my family, where we immigrated from. I have all kinds of stories around that. So that's one of my favorite topics. I know how to write books. I love utilizing social media. I like creating video content for YouTube. I like teaching students how to study. I enjoy teaching statistics of all things. And I'm very proud of my Southern heritage, and I have all kinds of stories about living and growing up in Alabama. And of course, because I'm Southern, and it's not exactly a Southern thing, but I have grown up hearing a lot of stories from my family, and so I love storytelling. That's one of my favorite things that I enjoy. Now, once you have written down some things that you typically enjoy talking about, or hobbies that you have, interests that you have, books that you read, it doesn't really matter what it is. You just have to brainstorm it. You might even ask people. Ask some of your friends. What are the things that I talk about? What are the things that I know? Because sometimes we're too close to ourselves to know exactly what it is that we do. Now, on the other side of that piece of paper, now that you have that, you can list speeches from one of the manuals in the Toastmaster group of manuals. And from that Toastmaster manual, what you want to do is you want to list each project. So in the Competent Communicator manual, there will be 10 speech topics or 10 speech projects. Any of the other manuals, there will be 5 speech projects. And so you list them, list the objectives, and you can sit there with that list and look at the topics that you enjoy and start mixing and matching and going, oh, okay, so for this speech, this might be a good idea. For that speech, maybe this is a good idea. So I actually map out, when I decide I want to do a manual, I map out possible speech topics from the very beginning, so that I'm not sitting there, finishing a speech and then having to start this process all over again. I actually go into the manual with an idea about the topics that I want to do and the speeches that I want to do. So for example, for the technical presentation manual, for that one, I utilized my background in research and statistics and utilized YouTube content that I've already created. So that one, when I decided to do that manual, it seemed like a really good fit to use my statistics and research background. Now, with that being said, here, for example, is the storytelling manual. Okay? So the storytelling manual, there are 5 projects in that. It's one of the advanced manuals. You do the folk tale, let's get personal, the moral of the story, the touching story, and bringing history to life. Now, this particular one used stories from my own personal life, as well as stories from my family history. So for example, the folk tale, this one I thought would be an interesting one, that I talked about a phenomena in my hometown county. So in Pickens County, Alabama, there is a courthouse in Carrollton, Alabama, that has a face in the window. And there's a lot of historical context to this face that appears in the window. There's a big story behind it. And so I decided to tell the story of what I grew up knowing about that. But also in researching my own family history, I have found out that I too have somewhat of a personal connection to that I didn't know of. And so I weaved all of that together to tell a story about something from the past in the county where I grew up. The Let's Get Personal speech, that was something where you tell an original story based on personal experience. And the speech title seems a little innocuous there. Her name is Fiona. Well, the reason that I wanted to do that one is because my family has this habit of giving things names. Okay, so my car has a name, and my house has a name, and so we have almost like a personal relationships with these inanimate objects. And so when I bought my first house, we named it Fiona because the little community that we live in, it feels like Brigadoon. And so Fiona is a character in that movie. And so I weaved a story of how we found this house, etc., and basically explained how she got her name. The moral of the story is something where that came from personal experience, where I've always been a student of, how can I get out of my way? I want to be successful, and I had some particular experiences at a kind of an outward bound kind of situation where you're out in the wilderness and you're challenged for a week with various different things. And I quickly found that, the mind can play tricks on you. So I wanted to tell the story of how that transpired for me and what I learned from it. The touching story was something where you want to arouse emotion. And I have an uncle that passed away in 2014 that I think his story is one of tragedy and hope. And so I wanted to tell his story so that people could understand that sometimes what they see is not really what they see. And so telling his story was very powerful for me. And then finally, in the bringing history to life, since I have done a lot of family research, I have found all kinds of things that can be overlaid on a historical context. So for instance, I have had family members who have fought in certain wars. I have family members that on the founding of the United States, some of them were for the revolution and some were not for the revolution. It was quite surprising to me to find out that not everybody in my family actually wanted to break away from Britain. And so learning about their stories and learning about how difficult that was a particular story that I thought would be interesting to my audience. So basically all I'm suggesting is that you take a manual, take just the high-level objectives of each speech project, and have a list of different things that that you are an expert in, whether it's cooking, whether it's photography, whether it's whatever it is. It doesn't really matter what the content is necessarily, because what you're doing is trying to match content to an objective. And so you then can take this wealth of information that and just start mixing and matching, so that when you start a new manual, you can actually sit down and kind of map out all of the speeches that you could possibly do with that manual. I hope this helps, and if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below, and I look forward to talking to you again on another video. Thank you.